Hi, everybody. As Tanya said, I do have some extensive painting experience. I was an illustrator for about 20 years, and I had to turn out a painting a month. So I know what it feels like to work under pressure. And that was in the day before the computer was invented. And when I discovered digital painting, I discovered how easy it was to correct your mistakes, to undo your steps, to change anything you wanted in your painting, to change the painting surface that you're working on in the middle of the painting, and especially how much fun it was to work with the brushes. But because I like to essentially paint and I don't want to get involved with a lot of different choices, which only confuses me personally, I really like to settle on one, maybe two brushes when I'm doing a painting. So this painting here was done with just the Sargent brush, playing around with it, fooling around with textures, the dab stencil panel, which I'm going to show you how to do, and impasto. And all these little things I just add to that one brush. So let me remove this, and I'll show you. This is the painting I put together for this webinar from this reference photo, which I took in a nature preserve behind my house. I don't really use my pro camera anymore. I use my smartphone because I think they're fantastic, and I will edit it right in the phone itself to get the most accurate color to match up what I'm viewing in the landscape. I love the landscape. I love God's green earth. I think it's beautiful and inspiring and uplifting and a great source of peace. So I paint in oils, I paint in pastels, and I paint digitally. And I just love finding what I call corners of beauty. So this is from the Nature Preserve, and we're going to do this whole painting just with the Sargent brush. So open up a new file. I don't know how many of you are beginners. You need to have probably a basic knowledge of Painter for this particular webinar, but we're going to try to do this anyway. So open up a new canvas and go to your brush menu. You can find Windows, go up to Windows, Brush Selector, there it is. And these are all the categories that Painter has in 2017, Painter 2017. And go to Artists, Favorites, and over to the Sargent brush. So when you choose this brush, let me get my layers palette over here and all the stuff we're going to use. And here's my color palette. Okay. So when you click on the Reset tool, you can reset any brush. And I am just going to paint with Sargent right out of the box. And already I know I love it. It's gushy, mushy. I love oil paints, and this is fantastic. Hit Command or Control Z, and of course you can undo everything. Okay. Go up to Painter and go to Preferences and go to Performance. And make sure your undo levels are over 100. This means that if you want to undo 100 steps, you can press Control Z 100 times. I have 192. You can tell I'm very insecure about my painting. Press OK, and believe me, you'll be grateful after. The next thing I want you to do is go up to Painter and go to Preferences and down to Brush Tracking. This enables your painter to pick up exactly how you paint, the pressure and feel of your hand. And just scratch on the scratch board, press OK. And that helps Painter to help you paint more easily. Let me show you something. If I go back to brush tracking, and there are all sorts of little shortcuts which I never use. I should, but I don't. Let's say I press down really hard. I'm working with a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I press really hard with my pen. Watch how these things change, the scale and the power. Press OK. Now, when I touch lightly, nothing happens. I have to press down really hard to get a brush stroke. That enables you to have more control over your work. Okay, so also you can go like this, Preferences, Brush Tracking. This is what I normally use. Rather than just go like this or press down really hard, I go light to hard like that so that I can add a soft touch and a hard touch. Okay? Now, I want you to Command or Control A will select your whole image here. You can see the little marching ants, and then press the delete or backspace button and everything goes away. Can't do that in traditional painting, right? I want you to make sure you've got these panels up on your board. So dab stencil, impasto, these are what we're going to work with, blending, size, papers, and grain. Grain, not so much, but we'll see what we can do with this. Now you can find all these things here under brush control panels. You have grain, size, everything that I have called up on the board. And you can dock everything to give yourself more space. So dock, dab stencil, wait for that little, see that little blue line there? Wait for that. Take the impasto panel, dock that, dock your papers, and of course you can put them in any order that you want. This is your workspace, okay? Let's go down here, size. We'll leave the blending like that. That's okay. We can put the blending here. There we go. I generally leave my color panel and my layers panel open and movable. I don't really dock them because I use them very frequently. So now, one thing about the Sargent brush, this brush will not work on layers. If you're familiar at all with Painter, you know that one of the big advantages of digital painting is layer painting. So you can add layers, and you can paint on a number of different layers and then trash them if you want, or change their blend mode and do a lot of different things. And this allows you to avoid doing 100 undo steps and just dumping a layer in the trash and getting rid of what you don't want. However, the Sargent brush does not work on layers, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So, see, nothing? Because a new layer is actually blank. The Sargent brush needs paint to work on. So when I select working on the canvas, look what happens. Now it happily paints away. Okay? So we can get around this in one of two ways. We can select a new layer, go to the paint bucket, and fill it actually with any color that you want by choosing the paint bucket tool and then pressing in the middle, and bam, you've got color. Now, B for brush, I do know that one shortcut. Now you should be able to work, there we go, with the Sargent brush, because it needs actually color to work on. Even if you fill this with white, that's considered a color in Painter. So this Sargent brush will work. Another option is taking a little canvas layer here, doing Command or Control A and selecting everything. See the marching ants. Go up to the layer adjuster, press down your Alt or Option key, depending on whether you have a PC or a Mac. Hold that down while pressing in the center. Look what happens over here. That actually replicates your canvas layer. Now, B for brush, back to my Sargent. Now I can paint again. Okay? So let's go over some of the things that this brush can do. Let's start changing things around. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the blending. And I'm going to change this to pressure. Okay? You want all of these aspects of your brush to work with the pressure of your hand. That's why we get these expensive graphics tablets, so that picks up 25,000 pressure points of our hand. You want them to obey you, okay? So I'm going to move the blending down, which will actually start to blend these things together. Move the bleed up like this. Okay, now it's blending. So that's one aspect of this brush. Now, you see that the strength is 100%, the reset, which means the amount of color on the brush is 100%, and the opacity is 22. Let's bring the strength down and bring the reset down a little bit. Okay. And try to create a brush that blends even more. Okay, so now it's blending in that warm cream color with the blue and the brown. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to papers. And you can choose any paper that you want to work on. I like to use the more dramatic ones, so let's try Window Frost, which is in the watercolor papers, which comes packaged with Painter 2017. And then we're going to go to Dab Stencil and click Apply Dab Stencil. And what that means is suddenly, let's get this to come up here like this. Okay, we want to remove our bleed. Okay, so remove the blending. And now we have this brush, and you're going to click on Apply Dab Stencil and push the strength up. So this is the strength of the paper texture that's going to come through. And you see what starts to happen? Okay. And you can indicate the minimum strength as well. Again, this should be set to pressure, so set all of your panels to pressure. You can pull this back. So we have some thicker paint, and then there we go. So this is what I use to create reeds. Very easy and very fast. Just float your brush across your surface. Now, mind you, you're all watching this webinar. This takes a lot of practice. Okay? You have to really paint a little bit every day, if not every day, very often. Get to know your brush, get to know your papers, and you can experiment with all different kinds of papers. Also, size. So I have my size and what it is right now, and then the minimum size set to pressure. So very, very light pressure will give me a really thin reed, and heavier pressure will give me a fat stem like this. Okay. If I take off the dab stencil entirely, maybe you can see that better. So thick, going to thin as I let the pressure go on my brush. This, combined with the dab stencil, can really give you wonderful, wonderful effects. Okay, it's just skipping across. Now another paper that I like to use is this one right next to it. Okay? And that is called Madness. Okay? This also is great to use. Now, one other thing you can add is you go to your grain panel and you do click on grain, which responds to pressure. And there we go, see? So it really is a dance between this panel and the dab stencil panel. You can pull back on the strength. You can play around with the minimum strength and see what it is that you want to use. And of course you could change your settings in the middle of a painting. Now another thing that I like to make sure that I have is papers. So this is what this paper looks like, Madness, right now. If I take this little slider here, I can change the direction of those things. I can increase the weave. Look, it's 246% of the size of the canvas, actually. So if I go to Dab Stencil and I increase this, look at this. The weave is actually very, very, very big. So you can see if I try to color it all in, you can see that it's making these giant blotches. So generally I try to keep my weaves smaller. Also, if this is a nice contrast, if I pull back on the contrast, this is the contrast, and just make it nothing, I'm not going to get any texture at all. So what that tells you is you have to play with this panel, the dab stencil panel, and the grain, okay, and choose a paper. So I have some of my own papers here that I've also have been using, and this too, this is great for grasses. There are a lot of papers available on the internet for purchase. There are courses that let you know how to make your own papers. You can just go hog wild. You can go outside and photograph the concrete and, you know, and create a beautiful paper. And let's see, we've got blending, dab stencil, impasto. So experiment with all these papers. Painter already comes installed with a lot of different ones. You can purchase sets and anything that you want. So these are really, really great. Okay, now let's go and let's make a painting. So I have this image here, and here's the painting I actually did already from this image, which I entitled The Preserve. And I've scaled it down, go to Canvas Resize to 300 dpi, basically almost by 5 by 8 inches. Okay, and that's great because even though painter's brushes work incredibly fast now, for any of you that's worked with earlier, who have worked with earlier versions, I tend to want to always keep my paintings small in the computer so that my brushes will really fly across the canvas. And I use online printing companies, and they have told me that that's fine. They can interpolate that up with the software that they have to be a 24 by 30 canvas. So we're good to go with this size, and that makes me happy because I know my brushes will work really fast. So what I'm going to do here is basically what I did for this painting. I'm going to turn off my mail right now so that I don't get that interruption. Sorry, guys. Okay, so in this painting here, I basically worked, as you can see, on one layer. I don't use many layers, and really, frankly, I mostly do not use layers at all when I paint because I'm so involved in painting that I end up just doing all my whole painting on the canvas layer. But I'm going to show you how to use a layer or two with this. So I do not clone my work anymore. I work from scratch. But if you feel insecure about that, you can add a new layer. And remember, we're only going to do this with a Sargent brush now, okay? Add a new layer. Go to the paint bucket, and you're going to fill it with actually any color that you want. Let's make it a little bit beige. And click in the middle, turns beige, okay? Now, I want you to pull back on this a little bit so that you can see the image underneath. And press B for brush. You can get your Sargent brush back, and I am going to be working with some kind of texture. So I want my dab stencil checked. I want my grain on. I want my size to be set to pressure. Blending, not too much blending. You can pull back on the bleed and keep the dry out to the right. When you push the dry out all the way to the left, you get a lot of blending. So I've basically got everything set up. If you hit the Alt or Option key and the Command key at the same time while pressing down on your tablet, you can change the size of your brush on the fly right as you're working, okay? Of course, you can go up here and change it manually, but you don't want to have to always do that, especially when you're painting. So let's get a nice dark color, and I'm going to start painting away. And remember, it's picking up the texture that I've chosen, so it's kind of nice. It's kind of like a sketch. Let's pull back a little bit on the strength so that I get a little bit more. There we go. And remember, this brush is set to the pressure of my hand. As I press down, I get a thicker stroke because I have done my brush tracking. Now, I know this is a lot to remember, but this webinar is being recorded, and there's a lot of stuff going into this. So don't worry if you're confused or it's going too fast. So you can just literally draw right over your photograph and get the main shapes, okay? Okay, which is what I'm doing here. If you're concerned about your drawing, you can just trace along, trace right over your photo. Just worry about the main shapes, okay? You don't have to put in every single detail. Okay. All right. So now, if I turn this little eye off and then you don't see the canvas anymore, here's my sketch. Well, that's pretty confusing because you've got these little dots behind it. No worries. We click on the canvas layer and we're going to add another layer between the sketch and the canvas. So click on new layer and you're going to fill this guy with white. You get on your layer adjuster tool here and you just click in the middle. You don't have to hold down the Alt key now because you're not replicating the canvas. You're just going to click in the middle. Make sure this is okay, why is this? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay, the paint bucket. Sorry, guys. So paint bucket, you're just going to fill this with white. And as soon as you do that, now you can see your sketch. Okay? And we're going to name this because this is still called the preserve. This is still our original image. We want to get that original image and put it off to the side as a reference photo while we work on our painting. So right now we're going to call this, okay, save as, and we're going to call it, okay, painting and sketch, whatever you want to call it, okay. Save it as a JPEG or you can save it as a painter riff if you want. Either way, press save. A riff, if you save it as a riff, which only reads in Painter, it doesn't read in Photoshop or anywhere else, it will save all of your layers for that particular version. Okay, B for brush. Now we have to open up our image, the preserve. There it is. Okay. Command minus to reduce it and get it over into the corner here. And we're going to start in with this painting. Now, based on what we know, I'm going to teach you a little bit about landscape painting. This is a whole other area to learn about. But generally, as we go into the distance, you can see here, there's a lot of atmospheric perspective and things get bluer and lighter. So if you notice, I didn't put in the dark green trees. That is a mistake that our cameras make. Our cameras try to even out or take an average of the values in our image. Whereas if you were really standing in the nature preserve, you would see the green trees were duller and they were in the distance and they had a slightly bluish cast to them because of the atmosphere of our Earth. If you stand out in a field, you will see it gradually disappear into softer tones, bluer tones, and less contrast. Generally, as you come towards your feet here, you're going to have brighter colors, richer colors, and more contrast. It's going to get lighter bluer and paler and less contrast as we head towards the horizon. Okay. Now, another thing I want you to make sure is that your horizon, and I have deliberately took this photograph to do that, is on the top third here, or it could be the bottom third. Don't put your horizon in the middle of the image. I don't know what your painting expertise is, but you need to paint in such a way that you will have your focal point and your composition based on the rule of thirds. And I'll show you what that means. Painter already supplies something with this. Canvas, composition, show layout grid. There it is. It's like a tic-tac-toe board. So if you were to draw this tic-tac-toe board onto your canvas, you'd want to put your focal point on one of these 4 points, and you want to put your horizon line on one of these lines here, okay, depending on what you want to emphasize. If I'm going to emphasize the sky, I put my trees here and paint all sky, but I'm not going to put it smack dead in the center. I also will not have the center of interest smack dead in the center here. I'm going to keep the centers of interest on these 4 junction points. That is extremely important because it actually aids the viewer's eye and it feels more pleasant, scientifically proven, to the human eye. So I'm going to try to concentrate on this area as my focal point. It's right around this particular junction over here, which means I'm going to try to lead the viewer's eye through this painting to this lighter patch of water, because this is giving me a lot of contrast, and I like that. The eye will always be drawn to the highest amount of contrast, the greatest amount of detail, and the greatest amount of color. So if I were to redo this painting here, I would actually increase the contrast. Now that I've decided on my focal point here, I would put bright colors right here, maybe not over here. Okay, put the brightest colors over here. And I would drive the eye to this point, which means I can't have a super bright, contrasty object in the foreground, because then my viewers will stay right here. So always look and think, what is going to take away from the focal point? Just like a supporting actor or actress should never overshadow the prima donna of a play. Okay, it's extremely important. So you are the editor. You can direct the viewer's eye, even if the photograph doesn't quite look like that. You do not have to paint every single thing you see. Okay, this could be another focal point here with this dark patch of grass against the light reflection. These are basic painting principles which can get rather involved, but you really need to learn them. If you want to make a good painting, it's not just the brush, it's actually the principles behind the painting. Also, drawing is incredibly important. If you have a bad drawing, inaccurate rendering, it's like a car crash that your viewers can't get over. If I have something really crooked and crazy here, I'm never going to be able to lead them into this painting. They'll stop right here. So think about that as it's a voyage you're taking your viewers on, and you want to lead them to your focal point. Whatever you choose, they can look at different things along the way, but ultimately you want them to arrive at the focal point. Now, the drawing doesn't have to be 100% detailed, but it has to be accurate, and I like to call it at least accurate suggestions. This painting took me some time, so I will begin to show you how I might start this painting, even though I'm probably not going to have a chance to finish it. Tanya, are there any questions up to this point?
Hey, I'm glad you're asking that, because I forgot to mention to everybody that they can ask questions. But you know what? I think we're doing really well. I've been addressing questions as we go, but there might be a couple areas of clarification. At the very beginning, the panel that you were working with, where you had multiple, the dab stencils, the papers, and all of that, a couple people were asking, how were you able to get everything put together? Was that one panel that you launched, or did you actually take and drag and drop the panels that you work with most often to create that?
Yeah, I put them together because I might add and I might take away. So you know, I had opened up this, I opened up this, I opened up this, and you can, so let's say they're all separate. Let's start with grain. You don't have to. You just drag one. You see that little blue thing that says it's active, and let go, it drops in. Drag this one, there it goes, okay? Drag this one, there it is. Now remember, if you drag, you can also drag, see the long blue line that just activated? If I do that, size is going to be above all of these. You can do that as well, okay? The whole idea is to organize your board the way you want it to be. For instance, I can take color over here and not drop it in, but drop it to the top. Let's see if I can. I might be able to do this. Oh, here it goes. There it is. Okay. So you actually have to grab the name. Okay, grab the name, and I can put it next to layers, or I can see that when I get that long blue line, I know it's active. Now look, I've stacked everything, okay, which probably might be a better option. You really want to keep the real estate free so that you can work on your painting. Now, here's my reference image. Here is my painting, and you can move this around. You can push it in like this and resize it. Just get the board comfortable the way you want it to be. You might not want your reference image on the left. Oh. Okay, there we go. Now I still have my little painting up here, so I kind of know where I'm headed. So what I want to do first is I want to add some pure color. I don't want to add stencil right now, and I want to make sure my paper doesn't have much contrast because I really just want smooth, a smooth brush. I'm going to leave everything else the same, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to put in the sky. Now you see here sky, even though our photograph picks it up as one white blob, sky has a lot of different colors to it, and it usually is darkest at the apex and lighter towards the horizon. So don't be afraid to add color to your sky. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on my sketch and just start painting right over it. I'm going to make sure the blending is pretty far down, and I'm going to bring back the reset, which will give me more of a blending option. See, it's already blending. Let's pull this back up a little bit. Increase the opacity. There we go. Pull this back up for less blending right now. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my brush tracking, and I'm just going to do an easy thing like this. There we go. See? So if the brush is not feeding well, then just go up to brush tracking and do a very easy stroke. Before, I had this like this, light and then hard. Okay, look at the difference. Now if I just do light, see the difference? Okay. This is where a lot of experimentation comes in. Now let's add a nice blue. Okay. This is going to be probably an even looser version of this particular painting. And now we're going to pull the blending back down. And then pull the blending back down so that this blends in. Also, sky always has some pink in there. So blending goes back up to add color. Blending goes back down to mush it all in. Okay. Now we're going to put in the trees, and the same thing. I really don't want texture yet. The texture, which is going to do with the, which is going to be done with a dab stencil, and choice of paper is going to really be added to the front, because if you're standing here, this is where you're actually going to see the most detail, right by your feet. Okay, so we're going to kind of do like a, and pushing the blending back up. because I want to add color first. I'm going to get this and come over here because I'm actually going to do this. Okay, see, I've got this little sky area there. And I mean, this Sargent brush can just blend beautifully and just give you such an oil painted look. I love this brush. Did I say that already? Okay. Now I'm trying to keep it more in the blue category, and I'm going to just give a basic outline because we don't have a lot of time of this painting. I can bring back to blending and start blending a little bit. And because I still have my size on, a little bit of pressure, very thin, a lot of pressure, very thick, look what happens, even though it's a pretty big brush, can actually draw with this brush if I just use a very little bit of pressure. That's why I love this brush. You really don't need any other brush. It's a great brush. Now, I will add a little bit of local color. Local color is the actual color of an object. But again, I'm keeping it dull because this is in the distance. Okay. Okay. Now, you can sample straight from your photo if you're afraid that you're not going to get the colors right. I'm just going to sample and go like this. Start adding this in. Remember, because it's in the distance, and this is one of the rules of landscape painting, you don't want too much detail. Be careful, okay? If you want less blending, of course, you're going to pull the dry out to the right. And you notice that I am leaving, I'm actually leaving all the other sliders in my blending panel. I'm just, because I want to work fast. And by fast, I don't mean do a painting fast. I mean, I just want to paint. I don't want to worry too much about 100 different factors going on. I'm going to pull this blending panel out here, pull the bleed back. Okay, pull the reset up, adds paint to your brush, okay? I want a richer looking landscape here. Okay, now let's go back here, this in here. Okay, and then I'm going to add some orange, and now I'm going to pull my blending back because I really do want this to blend. I don't want it to be too obvious. And again, this painting, I have about 10 minutes to complete this painting. I would say that I would need to work on this painting for hours. So don't let that fool you. Take as many hours, days, or weeks that you want for your paintings.
Hey, Melissa.
Yeah.
While you're painting away, there's a ton of questions coming in regards of where are you using layer opacity and why, and then, where is it being incorporated in the brushes itself or in the blending panel? There's a lot of
Okay, the
questions about it.
layer. Okay, so I basically paint digitally the way I paint traditionally. I don't worry about layer blending. I don't worry about, actually, should be like this. You're right. Good job, guys. I was wondering why it was so light. Okay, so I'd like to keep this. That's a really good question. I want to keep this at 100%, and I want to keep it on default. I don't play around with this because I'm trying to paint what I see. Okay, that's really important to me. Now, as a photographer, I use blend modes, galore, and I understand the wonderful things that they can do. But as a painter, my style is more that I just want to paint what I see, okay? So with that said, I really don't use blend modes, and I don't play around with the opacity. I'm glad you guys caught that, because having to paint at lightning speed has, made me a little bit unaware of these things. Okay. Now I'm going to put some water in. Now, again, I am still on one layer. I haven't added any layers, and guess what? I'm not going to. I love the Sargent brush because it most reacts the way I like to paint traditionally, and so I'm not going to worry about those things. I'm just going to get the water in, and I will show you when it is time, however. Here I'm putting in, when you want pure color, push that dry out to the right because you don't want blending, okay? When I want to add the reeds and things like that, that is when I'm going to put in my, see now here's the white, which is going to give me that focal point that I want, okay? And along the way, by the way, folks, you can save this. Since we've already saved it, you can just hit iterative save, bam, it's saved, okay? You don't have to go up and worry about save as and blah, 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 unless you want to give it a totally new name. But you don't have to do that. Okay, and see, I see a little bit of green in here, not purple, so I'm going to use that like this. Okay. You can also add your darks first, like this. You can put in your darks just to get your shapes, to preserve your shapes. I just made my brush really tiny. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions as I'm painting this?
I'm trying to go through these here. So David asks, you keep mentioning pressure, and I know you have an Intuos Pro tablet. With the Sargent brush, is there any way that you modify direction and whatnot? Does the tablet just take care of that for you, because the tilt's bearing all of that with the Intuos Pro?
The tablet takes care of that for me. I do not do anything else to this Sargent brush but what I showed you. And for me, I love the effect that I get.
Okay, that makes sense. There was a question about your recommendation for setting up the size of your document. What do you typically work with?
Okay, so I typically work with a very small document. So when I have a Samsung Galaxy 7, not the Note, so it hasn't exploded, everyone. And the document size is pretty large. I'll go out there and photograph my landscapes, and I just reduce it down. I make sure, and it's usually at 72 ppi, so I just reduce it down. I change it to 300, and I change it to like a 5x7. No bigger than that. Maybe an 8x10, but you'll find that your brushes will work really, really fast if you keep your documents small. And I have grilled printers. They tell me, don't worry about it. Don't worry about small documents. They're fine. So they print up just great. So in the digital world, you can paint very small. Now, you don't have to worry about those things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you ever, and I don't think you do, but do you ever use cloning? So you're very talented. You can look at this and paint from scratch, but cloning does make it a little bit easier for those of us that don't have innate talent.
Yes, I used cloning all the time when I started out in Painter because it was so much fun. So, and I'll show you how to clone this image if you want. We can do that. See, like right now, I'm not cloning, by the way. Right now, I'm just adding in this image, adding in, a bunch of, Sargent is great for really also suggesting things. Just push down, you get all these little wonderful things. But if I were to want to paint those reeds, I'll show you how to use the dab stencil, and then we'll go right into the cloning if you guys want to hang around, and we'll do cloning. So here's basically what I'm doing. I'm working with a brush that has no texture yet. I'm just fooling around with the blend modes. When I want to really blend stuff, let's go push it way back. I'll reduce the strength of my brush. I'll reduce the reset way down, and I'll get nice areas of blending like this, okay? I can also blend this just because it's in the distance. Okay. When I want to add pure color and I don't want that much blending, that's when I bring it all the way to the right. Okay.
Is there a particular provider that you use to print your canvases?
Yes, I use two people. So I use cgproprints.com, and I use, what is it? Artistic Photo Canvas. And they're great. They're much more expensive than the other companies, but spot on every time. I don't have to calibrate my computer. I don't have to do any of that stuff. Really fantastic.
There's also been a lot of questions about the dab stencils.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the dab stencils in the old days, you just had to work with grain. You see this grain panel that we have over here? Where is it? Right there. The dab stencil now makes the grain, for me, show up a lot more. I love it. So I will show you how we're going to put this grain in right now. I'm getting ready. See, all I'm doing is I'm setting myself up for some, and see there's a nice dark rich color in the foreground because that's how you would actually see. If you stood in this field, you would actually see that, okay? Let's blend this just a little bit. Okay, so now I would get ready to put my texture over this, and I would go to my dab stencil, and I would say apply dab stencil. Oh, this is important, folks. Some of you, when you blend with your Sargent brush, you'll notice it picks up white and you don't want it to. Click Enhanced Layer Blending. See, it even explains to you, paint or blend layers using improved transparency support. You don't want that white halo around your stroke. So always keep this checked. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier, but it's important. So now I got my dab stencil going. I'm going to push it all the way up here, okay? I'm going to make sure my paper has high contrast because, oh, I want this paper to show up. And I'm going to add a little impasto. When it said in the impasto panel, when it says draw to color, you want to change that to color and depth. And then you get impasto, which means you're actually going to have thick paint. Now look what happens. See, I'm just letting my brush happily skip over the surface. Very light pressure. Very light. It's a fantastic combination, the Sargent brush and the dab stencil panel. This is new and it's a great addition because you can really, really get some nice effects here. So let's look at our little, so actually I want yellow.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that that was new because I have been getting quite a few questions in regards of, can I use, sorry, that was my dog sneezing. Can I use dab stencils in earlier versions of Painter? So you cannot. They are new to Painter 2017 along with many other features, the textures. So if you're wondering for the version that you currently have, what has been new since the version that you're working on, we have a comparison matrix on painterartist.com that will show you exactly what's new. And, you know, it might give you some insight into reasons why you might want to upgrade to the newer version. A lot of what Melissa is showing right here is only capable in 2017. Nancy is wondering, how large can you reprint this type of work? If you paint, is this a 5x7 size? I missed.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, this is 5x7, 300 DPI. You can, okay, so I spoke to Artistic Photo Canvas. I spoke to the owner of the company. He said, Melissa, don't even enlarge your own paintings. He said, the software you have is not comparable to what we do in-house. He said, including Photoshop. He said, we can take a 2x3, that's what he told me, and turn it into a 15x20. So you could go up to 30x36, 40x48, any of those sizes. If you're unsure, the best thing to do is call them up directly, whatever printer you're working with. It might be a local printer. The best thing to do is just call them up and ask questions. That's how you will find out if your printer is capable of doing something like that. So you can get great little, look at this, little dots of color that in impasto, of course, because I have the impasto turned on, the impasto panel turned on. I'm going to push this down. Let's keep this up like this.
And because I don't expect you to paint all day, I just wanted to let you know that it's just about, it's a few minutes after the top of the hour. And
okay.
The wonderful thing is, I think we have addressed most of the questions. There was one more, and I'm trying to find it in the list here. It was, what is the difference between reset and dry out? And when would you use one over the other?
Great question. Okay, so reset is the amount of paint on your brush. This slider is in the way. If you put it to 0, it's going to blend. If you put dry out way down, it will blend also. It is a dance. A lot of these attributes of the brushes overlap one another, okay? It is definitely a dance. You have to practice. That's why you have to practice, guys. You have to see, what's going to give me the most bleed? Make yourself what I call a scratch piece of paper, just a little document on the side next to your painting, and fool around with that brush and practice all different settings, okay? And you will find out what gives you the effect you want. As soon as you find that out, write it down, because you will never remember. Trust me. Write that down, and then eventually you will learn or become instinctive. So Tanya, do we have time for me to show them how I would clone this image or not?
Well, I certainly don't expect you to do that. I can let everybody know that we do have learning content on youtube.com painter tutorials that will show you how to do cloning. If you just wanted to, show a file clone and a couple strokes, that's the basics of how to get started, that's fine. Okay,
so what I'm going to do is I already saved this guy, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. This is actually a 5x7, even though I've reduced it. I'm going to go to Canvas, Compositions, hide my layout grid, okay? Then I'm going to go up to File, Quick Clone, and just press Cancel, because you might want to keep this in the background. And again, cloning involves a lot more of what you can do with your reference images. Tanya's right, there's so much out there. Now, in order to clone, you have to turn the color off. You just hit that little stamp. If this is grayed out, if your color wheel is grayed out, you will be cloning. So B for brush, I'm getting the Sargent brush, and I can also go here, as soon as I clone, this comes up, Photo Art. This will give me my painting 100%, this will give me my image. This is 50% and drives me crazy. I like this, okay? So I will just, now what am I doing that's not working? One thing, I have impasto on. Let's turn it back to color. I have dab stencil on. Don't want that, okay? So, and I want to make sure my bleed is, my dry out is all the way to the right, so I get pure, I get better color. I want to make sure that, okay, here's my color panel. Sorry guys, sometimes when okay, it's grayed out. So here is our actual photo. So I want to see what it's going to give me. Okay. I'm going to reset my brush. This is a brush out of the box. Turn off the cloning thing.
So as you can see, everybody,
Now,
this is the way to cheat if you want to, if you're not Melissa Gallo. And this is what I do a lot.
now, if you want to add detail, excuse me, guys, I had the flu for 3 weeks, so it's still lingering in there. You will pull this back so you can see, oh, where's my detail? Make your brush small. Make sure you have really no blending at all. And you start just pushing down hard and going over all these little areas like this to get in more detail. You can also make your brush really small and put in tiny amounts of detail like this. So here, cloning is very subjective. It really has to do with the artist's hand, so it's not really cheating. You really are still adding very much of your artistic vision when you clone. So I'm doing different things that, you know, another person might do a little bit differently and do a heck of a lot better than what I'm doing right now. See, I want that contrast with the water, so I'm going to make sure that's what I want here. And I push it back to the right to see if that's actually happening. And I know that I don't want this ridge, so I'm going to push the blending back. So you can still use your brush attributes. Nothing says that you can't, okay? Go back here. I want to get the distinction between some of these white areas of water, or very, very light areas of water, very, very light blue, and then make sure that the foliage is darker. And I have to keep playing around with it. See, right now this is like blending to, this is just giving me, hold on. Why is it doing this? Okay, why is it doing that? Okay. Oh, let's see what it's doing. Okay, so, oh, it's sampling from something else. Okay, hold on. Okay. Current pattern. I don't want it to be the current pattern. There we go. Okay. Make sure your color wheel is always turned off. If you change things around, if you switch a brush, you're going to go back to the color wheel, which is actually nice. So you can actually take this and you can turn on your color and add your own color like this. Yeah, this is like 5-minute painting. And then turn off your color, so you're now cloning again. Okay?
All right, perfect. That was a great introduction. And then for anything else that you guys would like to learn, we have tons of cloning tutorials on youtube.com painter tutorials. I've posted that into the questions window quite a few times. This entire session has also been recorded, and I will process that, and probably I'm going to shoot to get it up there by the end of day today. So I didn't mean to cut you off, Melissa. I just know we're 10 minutes after, and you've done so much already, and I don't expect you to paint anymore. But we did a great job. We addressed everybody's questions. We've got Melissa's new Getting Started series for landscape painting on the YouTube channel also. I have one more video to add. I'm going to do that right after this session here. But outside of that, this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Melissa.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Tanya. Okay, guys, so have fun. Don't forget to practice a lot. And we'll see you soon.
And just to let you all know, we do have our next webinar. I have not set up the registration yet, but February 28th, we're going to feature Don Siegmiller, and he's going to be showing you how to create character art. So actually, I'm taking that back. There's probably a little bit of character in there, but he's going to do an enchanted forest. So hope to see you all there. Thanks again, Melissa, and I wish everybody a great day, and I hope to see you next month. Take care.
Okay, bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.